They have to get this right. If this is done well, I'm probably going to be hooked. Hello everybody, and welcome. A lot has been going on over the past couple of weeks with the development of Kitten's space agency, the self-proclaimed spiritual successor to space simulation legend Kerbal's space program. Aside from all the graphics eye candy and improvements to docking, the developers over at Studio Rocketworks have finally turned their attention to building out the vehicle editor. If you're a long-time viewer of this channel, then first, thank you. And second, you will know that I like to spend a lot of time in KSP's editor to build the most fantastic contraptions, from humongous to tiny, from simple to hyper complicated. So you can be sure I'm going to pay a lot of attention to how the developers are going to tackle the editor in KSA. And if you want to tag along for the journey, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you won't miss an update. Speaking of update, last week's build introduced significant changes to the very bare-bones editor we already had in KSA. I already built a 3-stage rocket with it back then, and while it was possible, it was not an experience I would recommend to anyone. The new editor is still nowhere near the level of the one in KSP or Kitten Model Club or Juno New Origins or any other build and fly type of game. But we already have the familiar layout with the parts picker on the left-hand side, organized by parts categories, the gizmos for translation and rotation on the top, and the buttons for symmetry and part snapping on the bottom. Yes, it's all very familiar, and you can also use the familiar keyboard shortcuts 1, 2, and 3 for moving, translating, and rotating parts, with something new. Pressing 4, or clicking the button, turns on the scale mode, where you can resize parts in their X, Y, and Z axis. Pressing X changes radial symmetry from 1x up to 8x, C turns snapping on and off. Z turns symmetry inheritance on and off, meaning even if you have set a different symmetry than the part you want to attach stuff to, it will inherit the parent part's symmetry. Scrolling your mouse wheel moves the camera up and down, holding shift while doing so zooms your view. Basically a carbon copy of how KSP does it in the vehicle assembly building. Also using W, A, S, D, Q, and E rotates the currently grabbed part by 90 degrees. There is no incremental rotation by pressing shift like there is in KSP. Other differences include the ability to focus your camera on a highlighted part by pressing F. And you can copy a highlighted part and its children by pressing Ctrl D. Compared to KSP, we only have just one editing space, so no vehicle assembly building and spaceplane hangar where the camera controls are different. Currently, the space you build in is just a gray featureless cube, which I believe is too small for what I'm going to build in the future. I mean, you can break free of the confines of this space, but then you're going to lose illumination on your vehicle. No matter how it will look like in the end, I hope KSA keeps it at just one assembly building. I know that do KSP and improve from there is kind of the mantra for Rocketworks in regards to KSA development, but there are already some improvements on how KSP did things in the olden days. While there's a lot of bad things to say about KSP 2, the developers for that game made a lot of choices that made the Kerbal vehicle editing experience, in my opinion, better. Increasing the VAB's volume, unifying the camera controls, joining the translation and rotation gizmos, adding the ability to work on multiple vehicles in one workspace. We shouldn't outright ignore everything KSP2 brought to the table just because the game was badly mismanaged from the top down and the publisher shut down the game before it really could come into its own. And by we honestly mean the Kitten Space Agency developers. I personally don't make these decisions. But you don't have to look at KSP2 to see potential for improvement on how KSP did things. There are a plethora of mods that improve on the editor. Kerbal Engineer Redux, Transfer Window Planner, RCS Build Aid, WASD camera controls, and many more. Since many of the KSA developers are longtime KSP players, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. But I thought it was worth mentioning that there are already a couple of ways to improve on the original VAB experience, some of which might be something that could be integrated into KSA. Since this is probably based a lot on personal preference, what are some of your editor mods in KSP that you enjoy? Me personally, I couldn't live without Kerbal Engineer Redux, Hangar Extender and WASD camera controls. But what are you guys using if you're veteran KSP players or even beginners? Let me know in the comments down below. I talked about building that multi-stage rocket earlier. It took me many attempts, a lot of patience and some lost nerves to get it done previously. Now? Well, there were some hiccups, not gonna lie. For instance, the game does not allow you to save a completely fresh build until you load it into the game world, re-enter the editor and then save it. And I mixed up the fuels needed for the engines I used. Be that as it may, I was able to build a 3-stage rocket that sent my capsule into orbit with more than 6,000 meters per second of delta V to spare. Once work on the editor has come along a bit further, Kitten Space Agency is going to be a lot closer to becoming an actual game. There is still a lot of work to be done on many fronts, but it appears things start to come together at a steady pace. Let's just hope that development can continue, which will depend on all of you guys, because the game is financed in part by contributions given through the website ksa.rwu.com, where you can grab the game for Windows or Linux completely free. If you still think that it deserves some financial backing, you can either give a one-time amount or set up a recurring payment. The latter is going to be very important for reliable income for the developers. And like the last time I mentioned the contributions thing, the developers did not ask me to tell you this. I honestly just want this game to succeed. After the KSP2 debacle, I think us space game fans deserve something fresh from the original developers. Yes, KSA is in part developed by people who have made KSP, and the game fixes many of the original's flaws and improves on the concepts. Before you leave, let me know in the comments what you are looking for in a vehicle editor for KSA. What should the developers focus on in your opinion, and what mechanic that KSP uses should they rather avoid? Even if you don't contribute financially, providing feedback in these early stages of development is just as important. Speaking of early, if you join my Patreon or as a YouTube member, you can get earlier access to some of my videos. And on the higher tiers, your name will show up here, together with all of these wonderful people. Thank you so much for your support. I really can't wait for KSA to give me the tools to go crazy on the vehicle builds again. They have to get this right. If this is done well, I'm going to be hooked. The parts catalog has grown a lot since the early iterations, but there's still room for a lot more. You know I'm going to need it. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel for more and follow me on my social thingies. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.